Ray Allen, great golfer and one of the great shooters of all time, joining us on the program. You played Oakmont, Ray?
Nope, I never have.
Yep, yep. Toughest course you played?
To date, the toughest course I would have to say is I'll say on homeland, I would say Medina in Chicago. And then just recently, a couple of months ago, I played Cabot St. Lucia, and it was a beast.
How is Jordan's as far as the test of skills, his course?
Uh, the Grove, um, the Grove is not difficult because you can pretty much hit it anywhere off the tee.
Oh,
Greens get really fast. I think you have to really know how to chip around there. You get around the green and it's like, you know, it for the first couple of rounds, it was like I didn't even want to play the place because I couldn't get up and down. I was like blading everything, and I realized the bounce on my wedge was too high for that course. So you got to have a low bounce because the grass is really tight.
does Michael make the course to his liking?
Um, I would say that he plays it fairly well because distance really isn't a factor there. The way he plays it, he doesn't hit the ball far, but he gets up and down from everywhere. So he gets the ball in front of the green, he's going to get up and down, and he's probably the best putter that I've seen.
Really?
Amateur. So you lose a lot around the greens there, and he's really good there.
Okay, a couple of things here. Grown is the first organic fast food restaurant founded by you in Miami, right?
Yeah, my
Okay.
wife and I.
All right.
Hmm.
All right. So Shannon and Ray created Grown, and you
Yeah,
launched a nationwide franchising program. Look at you. Look at you
yeah.
branching out. All right.
Yeah, I mean, you get those people who talk about getting a trainer and yeah, I need to work on losing weight, but our bodies are created by how we eat, and that's kind of been the cornerstone of my career, uh, focusing on how to eat correctly. I had a nutritionist for the first time in 2010, and even then, I sculpted myself, to even greater point, just understanding what not to eat, eating at the right times, specifically for a professional athlete. And so that's the thing. People we're dealing with, we're at this crossroads in this country where we're eating so poorly. The foods that are we have access to, they're killing us. And so we've been on a all organic diet. My wife and I, my family, my kids, and specifically my son Walker, since he was diagnosed with diabetes at 17 months. So putting foods in our body to make sure that we don't take on those chemicals, those processes and those GMOs, like super important. And that's one of the reasons that we exist, is to make sure that we provide food for people. In Miami, we have a drive-through, so providing food for people that allow them to eat foods without the guilt, foods that they could prepare for their families, food that they can eat on the go.
If you're looking for exploring franchise opportunities at grown.org or email at franchise at grown.org. Talking to Ray Allen. I noticed this on social media where there was a discussion about LeBron doesn't have the bag. Now,
Mhm.
I didn't realize what they were saying, so I asked Marvin. He interpreted that since he's younger, and he says that means that he doesn't have go-to moves. I thought it was money was the bag, and he goes, no, it can mean a lot of things. So
Yeah.
LeBron doesn't have the bag. What does that mean to you?
Um, well, I think over the course of a player's career, you kind of consistently see what they can do on a regular basis, and they do that. You pay to see them play. You go watch them play, and they do that move that they do consistently, and nobody could stop it. There's so many players over the history, and just kind of when you look at the NBA today, we've lost a lot of skill from that standpoint. Because even when I came into the league, we had mid-range players, we had great pick and roll players, we had great post-up players, and so now it's kind of like you're looking at a league of guys that you're shooting. It's a lot of one-on-one stuff. You're shooting a lot of threes, and ironically, between OKC and Indiana, they're probably two of the few teams in the NBA that are shooting mid ranges, and that's evident in how they got here today to be in these finals because they're not relying on analytics to only shoot threes. They're making sure they get into the paint. So when they have those scoring droughts, Halliburton drives. Like uh, in the game 7 against New York, or game 6, I think it was, Halliburton just pick and rolls, got into the paint, and he scored. And so ultimately, when you talk about a guy having a bag, it's having that pet move where they can get to it and nobody can stop it. And LeBron has always been an unstoppable, undeniable force. Where if you put a bigger guy on him, he can't keep up with him because he doesn't have the footwork. And you put a smaller guy on him, he doesn't have the size. So LeBron's never really had to have a pet move because he can just go downhill and score over everybody.
Yeah, but the casual fan doesn't appreciate that, Ray. They don't see what you see. They want to see like, oh my God, there's a sky hook or Iverson breaking ankles. LeBron with physicality. Nobody's going to go, wow, look at that. And Jordan had the aesthetics. I mean, he had, whether it was the fadeaway, going to the hoop, all of those things. It just feels like because LeBron his game doesn't look pretty, therefore he doesn't have a bag.
Well, I mean, also it's statistic driven. The league is because the guys are scoring more. So being able to get to the free throw line, being able to score in transition and take the first shot available, you really don't have to because I think even with Giannis, the year before they won the NBA championship in Milwaukee, you can see that he was trying to play a certain way where he had to have the ball in his hands. He was trying to make a move and he didn't have it. He didn't have that skill set. And it hurt Milwaukee's offense. And then the following year, when he started kind of moving the ball, got the ball to Drew. Drew was their one of their go-tos, and then Middleton was a guy who down the stretch would score a lot for him. And so Giannis stayed in his lane where he got scored in transition. If he got a wide open shot, he took it, but he didn't overassess his abilities. And I think a lot of times that's what it boils down to is just understanding who you are and just sticking to that. And you have to rely on your team. So with LeBron, that's just the pop culture way of saying that he doesn't have a go-to move that people can rely on seeing from him every night. But he's still, as much as he's in the game, he's still going to score 25 plus points a night just because he has pure dominance.
Talking to Ray Allen, the Hall of Famer. Explain to me the Jason Kidd situation. Brian Windhorst said there's mutual interest, Jason Kidd and the Knicks, him coaching the Knicks. You have Cooper Flagg coming to Dallas. And why would he want to leave that? And you're going to go to the Knicks. And the only thing I thought of is I'm bringing in Jason Kidd if he can bring in Giannis. If Giannis says, all right, I want to go play for Jason Kidd in New York. Other than that, why would Jason Kidd want to coach the Knicks instead of the Mavericks?
So this is pretty interesting conversation because even when Tibbs was fired last week, everybody was like, well, he made it to the conference finals. How can you fire a guy like that? A lot of times we're, in the outside world, because even when I was on the inside, things were happening in locker rooms that people had no idea as to what was taking place. And so people had opinions. And I think a lot of times, and you nailed it, there's things that are going on behind the scenes that we're kind of not privy to. So there could be, some type of deal being worked where all these pieces kind of, fall in place. And then all of a sudden it just kind of happens. They fall like dominoes. So
do you think Giannis is going to be traded to the Knicks?
Well, I mean, I know he's been quipping about leaving Milwaukee, and I think it's going to come down to kind of the best deal that Milwaukee sees necessary, for him to leave Milwaukee and understanding the void that leaves Milwaukee. They really want to get something for him. So it will depend on, what that looks like. When I got traded from Seattle to Boston, I remember sitting in my room and the draft was happening. And then I seen proposed trade, and it was like Boston's giving up like 6 players. I was like, oh, I'm so out of here. And it said proposed, and nobody called me. But the way I saw what Boston was giving up, I was like, yeah, Seattle's taking that easily. So it will depend on how Milwaukee can set themselves up for their future and who they get back in return. But look out Eastern Conference and NBA if Giannis ends up in New York, because obviously it's a huge market. It's a great market for him, and with the success that they've had um, recently with New York, but it is going to require them giving up one of their core players that they have right now.
If OKC wins this, let's say they win it in 5 or 6, will they be recognized as one of the great single season teams of all time?
Uh, it's hard to say that, but to your point, it's amazing that they haven't gotten the due. They won 68 games this year. My 2 championship seasons, we won 66 teams. So definitely, from a record standpoint, they have to be given that respect and that due. In the same token, they're so young. So I don't think people expected them to get there to this point. Even you take a team like Cleveland, being the number 1 seed, and I think they had the best record in the NBA throughout the year. Most people aren't surprised that they're not here right now because they were so young. And the fact that OKC made it, you would have thought it would have been Cleveland OKC, but the fact that OKC made it, the game is so different now because of the 3-point shooting. It shoots teams in and out of the game in the same token.
Yeah.
And you see the volatility is so great. You're watching the game, team is down 20, and all of a sudden, fourth quarter, it's a tie ball game. And a lot of that does have to do with, being able to have certainty scoring and that mid-range game. It has to come back to that, because there's too much consistency in being able to sustain, or come out of the other day, OKC came out of a timeout, and I don't know what the score was, but Indiana was up quite a bit, and Dagnall called a timeout, and then they came out, and I was telling my son, let's see what they run out of a timeout. And I think it was Dort that started with the ball on the wing at the top of the screen, and then he swung it, pick and roll, swung to Shea, and then he used pick and roll. He got all the way downhill and he scored a layup. And I said, that right there is amazing execution out of a timeout, because it slowed them down. They got an easy bucket, and they were able to get back and set their defense up.
Look at you teaching moments there with your family.
Yeah,
Yeah. You're not just a 3-point shooter, Ray. I mean,
no. Well, Dad definitely is leading the charge these days.
Yeah, but you used to go down the lane and dunk. People always go, "Man, Ray's a great 3-point shooter." I said, "You didn't see him early in his career then, because you were attacking."
Yeah, and here's the fascinating thing about that: in Milwaukee and in Seattle. Milwaukee, we basically played like a West Coast offense, so we got the ball, we shot quick, we had like a spread offense. We didn't really have a post guy. We could throw it down there to some guys that could score. And then those 2 places, once I moved to Boston, then we were more traditional to NBA basketball, with KG and Perkins on the block, and, throw the ball in the paint and kick it back out. And then, so it kind of set my feet a little more than I had been in my career. Didn't mean that I still couldn't dunk and I still, couldn't get to the hole. It did just change how I played. And the most important aspect of that, when you think about it, when I came to Boston, I had to decide, am I going to try to do this on my terms, or do I want to do it on the team's terms? And ultimately, you win a championship because you have to adapt. It's not the strongest or smartest that survive. It's the ones most willing to adapt. And in that situation, it was difficult because I went from shooting 16, 17 shots a game to 8 or 9. But that's what it took in order for us to win a championship.
KG yell at you a lot?
KG just yelled a lot, period. We always, I remember we played, our first game was in Rome. And before the game, I'm in here just dribbling the ball, getting ready. And I'm excited. This is the first game together. And then he looks over at me, and he's kind of moving to the locker room. He looks over at me. He goes, "How long are you going to be doing that?" And I was like, doing what? And I'm just sitting there dribbling between my legs. He was like, you going to be dribbling the whole time? I said, yeah, we're about to play a basketball game. This is what you do. And that was the moment where you got alpha males just kind of, kind of banging up against each other because the previous year he was in the locker room where he was the guy, I was in the locker room, I was a guy, and everything kind of marched to the beat of our drums. And so now we had to learn to share space with other individuals like ourselves. And it was an eye opener, but it taught me how to say, okay, in order for this to work, we have to share space, and we got to understand, like, this is not just my show anymore.
Good to talk to you, Ray. Thanks for joining
Always,
us,
Dan.
and good luck with the restaurant. It's called Grown. It's an organic fast food restaurant, and you want information about exploring franchise opportunities. It's grown.org or franchise@grown.org. Thank you, Ray. We'll take a break. We're back after this.